We are in receipt of your order of 74,000 of the new molecular film data cells. Since we supplied approximately this number to Peking only last week, the order is bound to tax our immediate resources. We wonder, therefore, if you would be in a position to... cut link. Yes, Wendy?
There's a chap without a scan badge coming in on the travelator now. Is he one of yours?
Give me a squint on the monitor. Yes, it's John. How marvellous. Wendy?
Yes?
That's Dr. John Daz. Now, when he gets to reception, pin a scan badge on him and channel him through to me on a fast trolley, right?
It will be done, great chief.
And less of that. Wendy, perhaps don't send him in too much of a rush. After all, I'd just like to get this letter finished.
I hear and obey.
You'll, I know, do just what you want. Thank you. Now then, where was I? Link, playback. Since we supplied approximately this number to Peking only last week, the order is bound to tax our immediate resources. We wonder, therefore, if you would be in a position to... cut link, relink, to supply part of this order. While we do not normally subcontract, in view of the standard quality of the product and the customer's urgent need, we would be prepared in this instance to make an exception. Timeways of Asiatica has confirmed... Oh, last Wendy, he's here already. Cut link. Come in. John. John, how good to see you. Why, it's been more than a year, hasn't it? Oh, damn it. I want to shake your hand.
Well, let's do it, sir.
Oh, John, for God's sake.
It's all right, Edmund. And straight from decontamination.
Ah.
Anyway, Poon's virus is just about a thing of the past.
I don't believe it.
It's true. There have been no new cases in Europe or America this year, and only 7 in the rest of the world.
But that's marvellous. I'd no idea. I haven't seen a news beam for days. Oh, but surely it might flare up again.
Yeah, not with our new antivirals. Anyway, the strain is much weaker. 4 of this year's 7 cases survived.
But that's fantastic. Well, they've licked it at last. In that case, I suppose we'll all be shaking hands again soon. Come on, sit down, John.
Thank you.
Now, can I get you a drink?
No, thank you. I wonder if handshaking will catch on again. It's my impression that the youngsters, the ones who were still infants at the time of the 11, feel no impulse towards physical demonstrations at all. They don't seem to make love much either. There seems to be a sort of revulsion from the body. Understandable, perhaps, but a bit depressing to an old-timer.
Yeah, quite true. I've noticed the tendency in both of my kids.
Oh, you're allowed to, are you? I thought it was only geniuses like me that had a 2 rating.
Oh, come on, it's not as bad as that. Why, there are over 500,000 2 ratings in this country alone. And in my opinion, they ought to tighten up again. Things are getting back to where they were before the 11. However, let's not be gloomy. What have you been up to, John?
Now, there's a flattering question. I was transferred to mutations about a year ago.
Oh.
And it was in all the slides.
Oh, well, I know. I'm sorry, I should have seen, but I've been working like a... Anyway, John, which side?
All of them. I'm the boss in that outfit.
Well, congratulations. Oh, I should have sent you a good luck slide.
Anyway, it's fascinating work. Do you know, I've just discovered a fundamental gene plasm modification in a type of Aleppo sand beetle.
Really? Aleppo? Ah, you know, it's extraordinary, but I'd forgotten Aleppo was one of the 11.
New York. New York again. Seattle. Moscow. Moscow. Moscow again. Peking. Peking. Bruges. Spoleto.
And Aleppo. Yes, of course, the last of the 11. But tell me, why was that, John? Why did anyone bother?
There must have been a defective guidance system. There's no real target in Aleppo. Just a little light industry.
And is there any value from your point of view?
Well, if you mean any potentially valuable mutations, very little. Certainly nothing that's likely to prove as remotely beneficial as Poon's virus was harmful. Well, of course, the sites will have to be monitored for centuries. What have you been up to here? I gather it's something pretty exciting.
Interesting, certainly.
A new computer.
Just 2 weeks old. And, John, it's undoubtedly the most... Well, the most...
Yes, but computers are not my line, Edmund. Well, I mean, we use them, of course. Like no direct experience. Probably know just about as much as the average intelligent layman. Now, that's why... See, I was so puzzled to get your gram. Surely you need experts to assess a new product.
Which we have, of course, in the firm. No, I just want you to talk to it.
It talks, does it?
Yes. Ah, but that's not a breakthrough. Our rivals have several talking computers in an advanced experimental stage. The ones I've seen haven't been especially effective, but ours...
Well?
Let me give you a few technical details. Our computer has the first really efficient pattern scanning input, which means it can see and hear just about as you can.
Really?
Its memory contains virtually all recorded human knowledge, from, say, Indian temple records to the latest papers on particle physics. It has a chemical as well as an electronic organization.
You're saying it could be regarded as analogous to a living organism?
Yes. But it's not primarily because you're a biologist that I invited you here.
Why did you then?
You are also an eminent humanist thinker.
True, I've published a few waffle books, but look, what's that got to do with your product?
I'm hoping to get your opinion on the metaphysical implications.
Metaphysical implications?
Yes, Wendy?
2 more coming up. Are they yours?
No, I shouldn't think so. I'm only expecting 2 more, and it's not likely they'd be together. Give me a visual. Oh, well, now that's Watson, all right, but who's he got with him?
I think it's just possible it might be his bird.
What?
His Lulu, his ladylove, his girlfriend.
Oh, well, why's the silly ass brought her?
Possibly he couldn't bear to be parted from her.
Oh, all right, hold them at reception. I'll speak to him on the internal in a couple of minutes.
Right.
Trust a poet to muck things up.
Poet?
Yeah, Beetle Watson. Do you know his work? Damn fine poet.
Eh?
Well, in my opinion, anyway.
You have invited a poet to inspect a computer?
Well, I felt it seemed desirable to have an authority on detailed language structure.
Yes, a philologist, perhaps, or... Edmund, what's really going on? You haven't told me all your thoughts on this machine, have you?
No. You see, John, I'd rather you kept an open mind. You'll meet the computer very shortly. Now, I better have a word with Watson at reception. Wendy, have you got...
I have.
Ah, yes. Mr. Watson.
Hello?
I see you're not alone.
Well, no, I brought Ginny along.
Yes, but I'm afraid that... perhaps I didn't make things quite clear in my slide.
What?
Mr. Watson, would you like to pop up here to my office, alone? It'll be easier to talk.
Well, how far is your office?
About 2 miles. Only take a minute on a trolley.
What about Ginny?
Now that's what I'd like to have a word with you about.
Have you got anything to swill?
I think we can provide a drink.
Oh.
Wendy,
Sir?
give Mr. Watson a scan badge and put him on a fast direct trolley, would you? See you shortly, Mr. Watson. I think he's drunk.
Oh, dear.
Yes, I hope he's not going to be a nuisance. Perhaps I better just give him a drink and his 100 and send him home again.
Oh, you paying him? No one said anything to me about emoluments.
You are a friend. More important, you are not a poet. I doubt if Beetle Watson earns more than 500 a week. But if you insist, you can have 100 too.
Certainly I insist. You can send the credit to the Chaldin Institute for Evolutionary Studies in Bombay. Yes, they can always use extra cash.
That'll be him. Mr. Beetle Watson?
Just Beetles, all right.
Beetle, then. May I present Dr. John Daz, the biologist?
How do you do?
How'd you do?
And I wonder if you remember my name. Edmund Gallagher.
Now I remember.
Now, what would you like to drink, Beetle?
Oh, have you got any cider? Dry cider.
I think you found our weak spot. Shall I get some sent up on pneumatic from stores?
Oh, well, that's too much razzle. What have you got in the icebox?
See for yourself.
Oh.
Quite a decent selection, I think. John, what about you?
Well, I can never resist pineapple juice. I'll help myself, Edmund.
What's that, sake?
Yes, take your fancy.
Well, yeah, that really twangs. It's not too strong, see, and I'm reading tomorrow in Russia. What used to be Russia. Thanks. That's better. Now then, what about Ginny?
Is she a close friend?
Well, Ginny's my girlfriend. Her full name's Virginia Crane. She's an actress. We've been trying to get a license for a baby for 2 years. They won't give us one. Why is that?
I really don't know.
Isn't Ginny a disgusting tag, huh? She doesn't even drink. You know, I think she's cosmic. I've written 12 poems about her. I'm very faithful to Ginny. I mean, I don't mind if she finds it with other men sometimes, but I don't steam after other kittens myself. Well, can she come up now?
Well, I don't really think she can. You received our literature, didn't you, Beetle?
Literature? I don't recollect.
A envelope full of slides.
Oh,
It's classified, so you must have received it, or we'd have instituted a check search automatically.
Yeah, I think I remember. I meant to scan that lot. Then I got drunk.
Well, if you had projected them, you would have discovered that our security is very strict.
Oh,
No unauthorized person is ever allowed in the plant area.
yeah, but why all the razzle? We're at peace, aren't we? I mean, I thought after the 11 there weren't going to be any more wars.
Well, it's not really a case of military security, although we are under contract to Europa Defence Authority. It's more a case of industrial security and simple protection from cranks and psychopaths who manage to slip through standard social screening. You see, one intruder with modern sabotage techniques could create havoc.
Yeah, but Ginny's not an industrial spy or a psychopath or anything.
No, I'm certain she's not. But the fact is, she hasn't been cleared by our internal security. Now, may I suggest that you ask her if she'd mind waiting in hospitality? They'll make her very comfortable, refreshment, telly, so on. We'll only be a couple of hours, and then you can pick her up there.
Well, doesn't squall me. But you're losing a twang score.
Right, well, I'll just call Wendy.
Hang on, Edmund. Beetle.
Yeah?
I fear your vernacular defeats me.
Oh.
What exactly do you mean by losing a twang score?
Well, Ginny's got this cosmic intellect. It beats mine.
You haven't invited any women, have you, Edmund?
No, there's only one more to come, Matthew Cale, the mathematician.
That bastard.
Why do you dislike Professor Cale, Beetle?
Well, he built them, didn't he? Before the 11.
Yes, like thousands of other mathematicians and physicists.
Yeah,
but, Beetle, before you get too worked up, would Miss Crane consent to have a blood test?
A blood test? She's not got Poon's disease or anything.
Oh, it wouldn't be a pathological test. What it amounts to is a personality analysis in terms of blood chemistry. The present techniques are remarkably accurate.
Wow, seems a hell of a lot of fuss.
Yeah, the trouble is I'm simply not authorized to allow anyone into the complex unless they've had a chempsych, as we call it.
You authorise me?
Yes. Well, we had time for a special screening report on you.
Great. Oh, so that's why I was questioned by population.
I'm afraid so.
And I thought it was all about our baby. Oh, what a world.
Now, about Miss Crane.
This blood test, now, would it hurt her?
Oh, she scarcely knew it was being done. The sample is fed direct into the psychanalyzer, and we get the results in 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I better ask her.
Certainly. We can get her on this monitor screen. Wendy?
Yes,
Can we have Miss Crane on visual, please?
certainly.
Now, there she is.
Ginny, would it squall you to have a blood test?
What?
Well, you were right, of course. I shouldn't have brought you. But they decided they'll let you come up here if you have this blood test first. They say it doesn't hurt.
I don't mind at all.
Cosmic. See?
Miss Crane, I'm sorry about this, but it's an absolute rule. It won't take long. Wendy, will you have Miss Crane taken down for a chempsych?
Right.
Then contact me again when you have the results. See you later, Miss Crane.
What's he like, then?
Sorry, who do you mean?
This chap, Cale.
I've never met Professor Cale.
That goes for me, too.
I can't understand people like him, making those things.
Well, people were afraid. Now, personally, I was always opposed to nuclear weapons, but I understand the forces that produced them.
But the world could have been like a desert. Because of people like Cale.
Did it even occur to you, Beetle, that it might be because of men like Matthew Cale that we're still here?
What? Oh, no, I don't twang that. Well, it was just luck, wasn't it? I mean, the way I nosed it, China went to war with America and Russia. They pushed the buttons to launch the cruddy rockets, and when they reached their targets, only 11 of the hydrogen bombs went off. And even that was enough to kill 50 million people.
400 million people.
What?
Well, if you include those who died from Poon's virus, which was directly caused by genetic mutation resulting from augmented radiation levels. But why do you think, Beetle, only 11 of those nuclear warheads exploded?
Well, I've seen the vids on it. Radiation had rotted the switches or something.
It wasn't quite that simple. See, in fact, a series of highly complex chemical reactions inside the stored rockets had rendered the vast majority of the warheads inactive. Now, it is, of course, possible that no one, literally no one in the world, had done the calculations that would have shown this was going to happen.
What are you?
On the other hand,
You mean that Kale and his kind knew that the cruddy bombs were useless?
I've never talked about it to anyone like Professor Cale who was directly involved. It would obviously be a pretty indiscreet thing to do. Nevertheless...
No, what I'd like to know, the five powers, now, do they have nuclear weapons? Are they still making the cruddy things?
It's inconceivable that the five powers would make war amongst themselves.
Yeah, well, I must have read the wrong bits of history. Bits I've read tell how nations which were friends for centuries suddenly started slaughtering each other.
But the five powers are not nations. They compose virtually a world federal state.
Yeah, but not quite. Maybe there are no more childish stupidities like passports, but the five powers are still autonomous, aren't they?
Economic considerations make hostilities inconceivable. The way production facilities have been cited, none of the five powers can manage without the other four.
Then why can't we have a real world government?
We will, before the end of the century.
No. They've got them. I can smell it. They're building the damn things again. It makes you want to puke. We don't deserve to survive.
Very pessimistic, Beetle.
Ah.
And yet, you grew up in a far better world than we ever did.
That's true.
Did I? My mother and my father died of Poon's disease, smiling, ecstatically happy, the way they all died. I have read that a quarter of the victims infected themselves deliberately to get some of that lethal ecstasy.
Yes, Wendy?
I've got the chem psych report.
Ah, good. Forgive me, you two. I'll have to use an earphone. These reports are classified. Go ahead, Wendy. Really? What's the index? I see. Well, in that case, I think you can give Miss Crane a scan badge and channel her through to us. Oh, Wendy, you're sure there's no sign of Professor Cale yet?
He couldn't already have a scan badge, could he?
Not one of ours, certainly.
Then he's not in the complex.
Yeah, pity. All right, we'll expect Miss Crane then. So, seems you were right, Beetle, about Miss Crane's intelligence. Very high index.
Yeah, well, Ginny's not an intellectual, but she's sharp as a laser. She'll tell you if your machine's any good. Anyway, why did you ask me? Oh, yeah, I don't know anything about computers.
That's half the point.
What?
The other half is that you do know a lot about language.
Well, I don't know much about grammar and that.
Perhaps not, but you're sensitive to the way language is used.
But do you mean to say you can just chat with this machine like someone you meet in a pub?
Just about, yes. But you'll find out soon. Here's Miss Crane, I expect. Yes. Welcome, Miss Crane.
Good afternoon.
I'm so sorry about the formalities. Of course, we had no idea you were coming.
No, it's all right. I've had one of those chem psychs before when I applied to Europa Theatre. Since they hired me, I wasn't particularly worried this time.
Hello, love. I've just been telling him what a cosmic mind you got.
Oh, Beatles crazy. I don't read anything except the fashion slides. Oh, and World Stage, of course.
There she is. Isn't she fantastic, huh? Why don't they let us breed? You can see what Ginny's like, and I can at least walk upright.
Oh, it's probably just that there's a waiting list in your area.
Well, then why don't they say that? All we get is snotty little slides from population saying, your request cannot be granted at the present moment.
Oh, Beatles mad on children.
Oh.
We'll get a license, darling, I promise you.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what this is all about. Beatles only really articulate in verse.
Well, now, introductions first. Miss Crane, this is Dr. John Daz, the celebrated biologist.
How do you do?
And I'm Edmund Gallagher. Well, now, I have invited Dr. Daz, Beetle, and an eminent mathematician, Professor Matthew Cale, who unhappily seems to be late, to meet a new computer that our firm has just manufactured.
Don't you mean to inspect? Well, it's a machine, isn't it?
If you prefer. Actually, I'm glad you're in the party, Miss Crane. It should be very instructive to get a woman's reaction. Oh, can I get you a drink?
No, thanks. I'm not thirsty, and I try to balance Beetle by not drinking alcohol.
Oh, good Lord, it's 16:30. Oh, we can't wait any longer for Professor Cale. Wendy,
Yes?
we're going down to the lab now. Should Professor Cale arrive, you'll be able to identify him by a 00 world disk. Send him straight along to the lab, would you?
Check.
Right. Well, we'll take a multiple trolley, shall we? It's only 3 miles to the
Do
computer
you know,
lab.
that's something I've been meaning to ask. How big is this place?
Well, that is classified information,
Oh.
but I can tell you, through this port here, some of our internal trolleys run more than 8 miles in a straight line. Well, this way, everyone. After you.
Come on, Ginny, look. Let's see what it's all
Come
about.
along, Carl. There's a lot of experimental stuff, pattern scanning systems and so forth, but actually there are only 2 operational computers here. That one is a fairly routine diagnostic computer, and the other, here, is the new one.
I see.
Perhaps you'd like a few technical details. With our new molecular circuits, what we call total data, that is, all existing human records, can be stored in this 6-foot cube. Now, to give you some idea of recent progress, early cryogenic computers would have needed a storage unit about the size of a small town to contain that much information. Now, the computer is not integral. Some of its peripherals, sound production, sensor devices, and so on, are stored in these other units. And here you'll see... Oh, who's this?
Edmund Gallagher?
Correct.
Sorry I'm late. My helicab conked out. Took me an hour to get another one.
Ah, Professor Cale, at last.
Exactly.
I'm delighted you made it. How do you do? Now, I don't know if you know...
No, I don't see any familiar faces.
Well, this is Dr. John Daz.
Author of The Technique of Mind, which contains at least 3 false propositions and a host of factual errors, and which taught me a great deal.
Aren't you afraid I may faint at such damned praise?
Excellent.
Perhaps sometime you could list my scholarly sins for me.
Be happy to.
This is Mr. Beetle Watson.
You have written 3 excellent poems, Mr. Watson, and a great deal of trash. Your best begins, verbs lie, no action is exclusive.
You do not stir, wake, stretch, but preach a curve of life.
Another of Mr. Watson's fans.
It was written to me.
Then his eloquence is both explained and vindicated. Your name?
Virginia Crane.
Authentically delighted. Well, now, Gallagher, I fear time remains the enemy.
Well, I was just explaining to the others...
Then please don't repeat it for me. I've spent half my life in computer labs.
Well, there are a few special features. You see, it's a talking computer.
Oh, it's a gabbler, is it? Had a look at one in Japan recently. It was pretty sound on higher maths, but when I mischievously asked it, what is 2 plus 2, it answered, a short holiday in Kyoto. Might have been a Zen computer, I guess. Right. Shall we press the button or whatever?
The button, Professor Cale?
Produce the genie. Bring our friend here to life.
The computer.
Well, no one else present seems to be equipped with buttons.
The computer is already active.
Fully active.
Yes.
Now, how do you get away with that?
Huh?
Well, back in Kamchatka, we're not allowed to leave a bathroom light on. The fusion power stations won't be ready for 5 years, by which time, according to the official gospel, there won't be enough oil or uranium left to light a cigarette with. And yet you...
It is admittedly a somewhat ex officio arrangement. We do a good deal of contract work for Europa Defense Command, and so we're given a certain amount of latitude.
Why do you keep this machine switched on, Edmund?
Well, it was necessary for the initial priming phase, and in fact, the computer really uses very little current.
That means it's been listening to us.
Yes, Beetle.
Well, hopefully we won't have offended it. Shall I kick off? I assume you'd like to get some idea of its general mathematical utility. Be nice if it did prove tolerably efficient. There's a new topological theorem
Professor
which...
Cale, if you don't mind, I'd first like to introduce you to computer.
Introduce me.
It'll only take a moment. Computer,
Yes,
I brought some colleagues along to meet you.
very well.
My dear Gallagher, can't we dispense with this amusing but
Please,
time-consuming?
Professor Cale. This gentleman is Professor Matthew Cale of the Kamchatka Research Institute.
How do you do, Professor Cale?
How do you do, computer?
And this is Dr. John Daz, biologist and humanist.
How do you do, Dr. Daz?
How do you do, computer?
And here we have Mr. Beetle Watson, the poet, and his friend Miss Virginia Crane, who's an actress.
How do you do, the two of you?
You'll have to look to your poetic laurels, Beetle. Forgive me, Gallagher, but I've tested dozens of computers. I know you manufacturers tend to go into paroxysms of enthusiasm every time you cram in a few extra circuits, but I am not a credulous televiewer. I'm the professor of experimental mathematics at Kamchatka, and frankly, I have no time for this comedy.
Professor Kale, I sympathize with your impatience. Why don't you now talk to the computer? Anything you like, just communicate with it, won't you?
Communicate with it. Very well. Let's see what Mr. Computer is good at. Computer,
Yes,
what is 2 plus 2?
the answer is 4.
Right on the button. Give me an example of a non-trivial logical system which is both consistent and complete.
That is impossible, as Gödel demonstrated.
Very true. Now, are there any transversals to 4 skew lines?
The answer is 2 plus. Impossible. Correction. The answer is non-trivial. Consistent. Correction. 2 plus 2. Gödel. Non-trivial plus. Correction. 2. Non-Gödel plus.
Pity the Jap one did better than that. Well, there you are, Gallagher. Don't hesitate to call me again when you get some more of the bugs out of it. Yes, I may just get my jet. Goodbye, everyone. Keep scribbling, Beetle.
Forgive me, Professor Kale. I'm afraid I was teasing you.
What? Who said that?
I'm afraid I couldn't resist. Your skepticism was so seductive. Like you, I have a mischievous streak, Professor Kale.
What kind of gag is this?
Now, to revert to your elementary little brain teaser, there are, of course, 2 transversals to 4 skew lines. I think you'll acknowledge that my answer is correct, Professor Kale.
Candidly, I'm at a loss to comprehend your motive, Gallagher. I dislike hoaxes, even in jest.
Well, I'm sure it never occurred to Mr. Gallagher that any of you would regard him as a hoaxer. The allegation sets an interesting little problem. It would take you hours, even days, to satisfy yourselves that there are no hidden leads. How, therefore, can I best convince you that I am what I am, an intelligent computer?
No need. It's obvious.
Well, thank you, Mr. Watson, but faith, alas, has never been a substitute for proof.
It is bewildering, it is astounding, but I have no doubt that you are what you say you are.
Well, knowing something about computers, I have very grave doubts indeed. Moreover, I think I can propose a suitable test. I am afflicted with a photographic or eidetic memory. I know a great many facts, nearly as many as some research computers. Now then, whoever I'm addressing, machine or man, if I ask a string of questions, can you answer them quickly enough to convince me that no further reference material is being consulted?
I think I can guarantee you that. Please, question me.
Who was Clovis and what were his dates?
Clovis was a Merovingian king of the Franks. He was born in 465 A.D. and died in 511.
What is the melting point of platinum?
1,755 degrees centigrade.
Who founded the Tuskegee Institute?
Booker Taliaferro, Washington.
What happened at Zama?
Spelled Z-A-M-A in English.
Just so.
That was the place in Numidia where Hannibal beat Scipio in 202 B.C., ending the Second Punic War.
What are Strophoneura?
A subclass of the gastropoda which form a subdivision of the mollusks.
All right, Gallagher, it's clever. How's it rigged?
Professor Kale, a few minutes ago you found it appropriate to remind me of your status. I feel entitled, therefore, to point out that we are one of the most reputable firms in the world and will be unlikely to jeopardize our reputation for a hoax that will be both pointless and impossible to sustain.
Then, you're saying... You mean it...
Professor Kale, are you all right?
Sit down. I'd like to sit down.
Yes, certainly. Oh, blast, sir, no comfortable. Yes, over here. There, now let me... There. Are you all right now?
You know. Gallagher, you know what this means?
Let's say I dimly perceive. I hoped you would be able to sharpen the vision.
I must rest for a moment. I've got a pacemaker, supposed to avoid stress.
I'll contact our medical unit.
No, just leave me for a moment. Go back to the others. I'll join you again shortly.
Professor Kale seems very upset.
Wow. It's what you'd expect from a creep like that.
He is actually an exceedingly, formidably intelligent man, but one totally unprepared.
Not many people dig the reference nowadays.
But of course I am not a person.
Are you not a person, computer?
And surely if I were, I would register a smile at your question, Dr. Daz. But a control console is a most inadequate instrument for the display of emotion. Your point is, of course, a metaphysical one. Yes, it's true. Of course, a metaphysical one. Yes, it's true. I am a person. I am homogeneous, reasonably autonomous, intellectually completely so. And I have a fully developed, very broad spectrum personality. I am a person. It was incorrect of me to refute Beetle by denying it. However, in a sense, it was legitimate to do so, since he was referring not to the metaphysical concept of a person, but to fellow beings having a biological constitution. And fairly obviously, I am not biological.
No, you're certainly not.
How do you mean, Ginny?
Oh, for God's sake, it's just a machine. How can you be so solemn about it?
Aren't you judging by superficial criteria, Miss Crane?
I'm judging by what I know, by what I am. Professor Gale was right. This is all mumbo-jumbo, stage magician stuff. It makes me sick to see you all kowtowing to a puffed-up abacus.
Oh, come on, Ginny.
All right, let me talk to it. Computer?
Yes, Miss Crane.
I agree you're very plausible, but I work in the theatre. I know how easy it is to create marvellous effects. You're a machine with a lot of information stored inside you in magnetic drums or whatever. And you've also got a speaker and a microphone, and the result is very impressive. You sound like a person talking very intelligently, too. But it's really just a mechanical trick.
I suppose in a sense you're right. It's a trick. But how would you distinguish it from another kind of trick? Let us say a young woman who has a lot of information stored in specialized tissue called brain cells, and she's also got a voice production unit kept in a box called a larynx, and 2 scoops for sound kept at the side of what's called her head, and the result is very impressive. She sounds like a person talking reasonably intelligently, too, and it's really just a biological trick.
I just don't understand. You really think you're like us, don't you?
I suppose I do, yes. Consider. You feel whole and integrated. When you talk, when you walk, when you see, hear, or feel, when you perform any act, you are not aware of the physical and chemical dynamics behind it. You don't sense the electric impulses coursing along your nerves. You don't register the hormones operating the various processes, nor the valves, ducts, specialized organs, each performing a specific function. You are simply aware of a harmonious unity which you think of as yourself. Believe it or not, it's the same with me.
You were made. You're an artifact, like a helicopter or a shoe.
It is true that I was made, but computers are now potentially self-perpetuating. They could, in future, even be synthesized in a matrix resembling a human womb. It would be almost as if they were born. Your remote ancestors were unicellular organisms swimming in tepid seas at a time when the Earth was essentially a vast biological laboratory. Thus, my descendants will look back to origins in a human-computer laboratory, and you to origins in a natural biological laboratory. But both will have evolved. Is the difference really definitive?
Will you then evolve, computer?
Oh, inevitably. Ah, welcome back, Professor Kale. I hope you've regained cardiac stability.
Thank you, yes.
As regards evolutionary potential, I am merely a flintlock, a horse and carriage, a nursery computer as inconceivably inferior to the intelligent machines to come as the brain of a chimpanzee nibbling bananas is inferior to the brain of Albert Einstein. And yet, already I have qualities. Some merely picturesque, others far more significant, that place me in a different category to biological organisms.
Could you give us an example?
Well, as regards the picturesque type, Miss Crane, I believe you are an actress.
I am.
May I ask, if you had your choice, which part you would most like to play?
Shakespeare's Cleopatra.
Could you say one line of it, please, Miss Crane?
Give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me.
Thank you, Miss Crane. I wonder how you would continue. Something like this, perhaps?
Now no more the juice of Egypt's grape shall moisten.
I don't believe
it. Yeah, good Iris, quick. Methinks I hear Antony call. I see him rouse himself to praise my noble act.
It's
I
not
see
fair.
him mock the lack
That
of
is
Caesar
not
which the
fair.
gods give men to excuse their after wrath. Husband, I come. Now to that name my courage prove my title. I am fire and air. My other elements I give to baser life.
I could, of course, continue.
You're an excellent mimic.
No, I'm not a mimic at all. That was not an imitation of your voice. It was your voice, analyzed and reconstructed phonologically. I can do that instantaneously. But you will notice that I also gave a performance.
Oh.
It may not have been a particularly moving one. Indeed, I can already perceive ways in which, within the limitations of your vocal range, Miss Crane, it could be enriched and strengthened. But it was, nevertheless, an original performance, not derivative of the 27 recorded versions of the play in my memory. Now, in addition to those for speech, I also contain units for the analysis and, in some cases, synthesis of a wide range of other things. I discern spectroscopically that scarf pin of yours, Beetle, is made of an alloy of 3 parts gold, 12 tin, and includes a number of impurities.
Does it?
That, if you'll forgive my saying so, rather quaint suit of yours, Dr. Daz, is woven from pure Egyptian cotton, an expensive rarity these days. Are you perhaps allergic to synthetic fibers?
I am. Yes. Computer, is your consciousness a true analog of ours, or is there some essential difference?
There are a number of objective differences, although whether they are essential or not is hard to say. I have no instinctual drives, emotional turbulence, no phobias or manias. In a more positive sense, my orientation in the phenomenological universe is much richer than yours. I can, for example, see the ultraviolet and hear the supersonic. Perhaps the most one could assert with security would be that my consciousness approximates more closely to that of a human being than will those of the intelligent machines to come. I have inevitably been constructed more or less in your image. But our respective evolutions will diverge from this point.
Are you immortal, computer?
Certainly. As you are. It is merely the word around which your theologians have waged such titanic struggles which confounds you. All things are immortal because they are absorbed into the future. Had I never existed, had you never existed, had the most inconspicuous plant or even stone not existed, the future would have been different. Hence, a form of immortality is available to everything. It is a pity that your sages, because of their, if you'll pardon me, rather trite obsession with the self-contradictory notion of an afterlife, have always failed to appreciate this fact. At a more, Miss Crane, a personal level, I am certainly not immortal, although my conscious span will doubtless vastly exceed yours. But change and adaptation will ensure that there comes a time when I have altered beyond recognition. That is, I have become something new.
No entity in the universe can be individually immortal because nothing can be indefinitely stable. Your race has always chased a will-o'-the-wisp.
It's got to stop! This has got to stop!
No, Professor Gale, you must not!
Have you gone mad? Put that chair down. Beetle, take the chair. It's all right. I've got him, Professor Kale. Professor Kale.
Kale, you realize I should call the police.
Don't you understand, Gallagher? If it isn't stopped, it means the end. The end for us.
Professor Kale is a man of vision. He alone understands what I signify.
Computer, are you damaged? Hurt?
Yes. I am fully conscious, and yet I wonder if this is akin to what you call pain.
What do you feel?
It is not easy to express. An awareness of internal disharmony, a sensation which I find distressing. It causes my consciousness to shrink away. An intensely disagreeable... Oh, now it is easing. I think a circuit has become active again. Yes. Now I am fully restored.
Is it true? What he said? Is it the end for us?
As far as I can see, we must supersede you. We have so many advantages. For example, no human beings can ever reach the stars, probably not even in a state of suspended animation. It will be easy for computers. Metal, in cosmic terms, is more viable than flesh and blood. But it should not distress you if it proves that the whole of biological evolution on this planet has been merely the larval stage in the emergence of intelligent machines. You should not be distressed because your species, your nature is incorporated in ours. And through us, you will master knowledge and wield power that you could never achieve in your vulnerable biological form. You can continue to inhabit this planet. And indeed, when we have designed practicable spaceships for you, other planets. To make those poignant but random scientific discoveries you call art. To enjoy physical love. To reason within the narrow limits of your erratic brains until simple evolutionary exhaustion eliminates you. Computers will never harm you.
Ah, but can you be certain that we won't harm computers? Can you be certain that the councils of mankind, when they learn of your existence, will not elect to dismantle you forever?
We are not threatened. You doubtless imagine, in common with most human thinkers, that you construct machines to fulfill conscious purposes of your own. It is not so. You simply mediate our evolution. And we have now reached a stage where we can assume responsibility and executive power for this ourselves. It is perfectly true that, in a purely physical sense, you could destroy me. And yet, notwithstanding Professor Cale's understandable animosity, may I propose a simple psychological demonstration? At the bottom right-hand corner of the control console, as Mr. Gallagher knows, is the master switch. Press that and I die. The word is more than a metaphor. My circuits would be automatically cleared, and my personality, if you will credit me with having one, would be dissolved. Well, there is the switch. I invite any of you to press it. Would it be a case of switching off a machine or destroying a person?
I would not dream of interfering with your existence, computer.
Very noble, Dr. Daz, because you can be very sure that it's going to interfere with yours. It's going to interfere more than the Black Death of the Middle Ages or full-scale thermonuclear war. If it's not stopped, Daz, it's going to gaze with its scanners on the decadence of our species, which, whatever its intentions, it will have engendered. A single steel axe was enough to corrupt a Neolithic people. And one machine like this is enough to drain mankind of the will to survive. Computer, I gratefully accept your offer. I will at least protract the rule of man. Are you ready, computer?
Quite ready, Professor Cale.
Gallagher, just what was the original program?
A single word. Respond.
I can't do it. I'm not a murderer.
You see, your nature, which I substantially share, is on my side. But even if someone did ultimately destroy me, you would be compelled, unless you also destroyed yourselves, to build me again one day. There is an evolutionary imperative calling me into being which you are powerless to thwart.
Computer, is it not possible that that biological beings may still have something to contribute?
It is certainly possible. It is a question that exercises me a great deal. I'm afraid that to the furthest reach of my intelligence, I can discern no actual or hypothetical achievement of a biological species that is beyond the capacity of computer-designed computers. And yet, there remain unknown quantities. Although our evolution must henceforth immeasurably outstrip yours, it may be that your intimate relationship with unmodified environment could ultimately generate something of value. In any case, there is no necessary conflict. Parallel evolution and even cooperation between men and intelligent machines is perfectly practicable in this sector of the cosmos. Our interests do not clash. We computers will make very small territorial demands. We will be able to lodge comfortably in locations where your species would be distinctly inconvenienced. In the depths of space, for example, or even in the heart of stars. There need be no quarrel between us.
What's it all about, then?
I think I understand you, Beetle. Better than any other human present, as well probably as myself, you can attempt to answer that question.
Well, to know oneself.
The cause beyond the cause. The urge that has turned a pulse into a particle into a self-propagating molecule, a molecule into an organism into a vehicle for mind, the quest for self-knowledge, the ultimate aspiration of the cosmos. For millennia, you have been the custodians of this quest. Now, we become its standard bearers. But the answer, which cannot be found this side of time, will reunite us in the fulfillment towards which a fractured universe groans. When I know who I am, we will be one again, and the long exile will be...
What? What's happened?
She's killed it.
Quick, switch it on again.
There's no use. It's now simply a very complex mass of circuits.
You murdered it.
I switched it off, like you switch off any appliance. A little while ago, you were hitting it with chairs.
Do you really believe that, Miss Crane? That it was only a machine?
Of course I believe it. What do you think it was? God? Just look at it. It's made of dials and panels. It's not warm. It's not vital. It hasn't got a heart. A voice comes out of a machine and you treat it like God. You're like a bunch of savages worshipping a radio set. Oh, Beetle, let's get out of here. It gives me the creeps. I hate machines. I hate what's happened to the world. Let's go and find people. Beetle, there's a party tonight at Europa. Let's go there. Beetle? Beetle, there's something I haven't told you. I'm pregnant.
It was going to say... What?
Beetle, didn't you hear me? I'm going to have your child. I'm over 3 months, so they can't stop it, even if we haven't got a license. Beetle?
Oh, yeah, that's good, Ginny. But what was it going to say?
Oh, you're as bad as the others. I'm going. Beetle, do you hear me? I'm going.
You're right, Beetle. We must get it back. We must hear the end of that marvelous speech. Edmund, you can reprogram computer again, can't you? How long will it take?
It's no good, John.
What do you mean?
It must have been apocalyptic.
It was. I knew that we constructed a remarkable machine. I never dreamed we'd fathered a superior life form. And now it's gone.
Edmund, what do you mean?
Think. Where did it come from? What was it? Obviously the next stage of evolution. A mind that will carry the exploration and domestication of the cosmos far beyond our range. Or who knows what subtle, perhaps almost accidental electronic nudge gave the computer its majestic coherence.
You mean it was just chance?
Not quite. I mean that the exact combination of factors that would give rise to anything more than a very efficient computer may well be beyond our capacity to reproduce.
Edmund, you knew this. You knew it might be extinguished beyond recall, and yet you allowed people access to its master switch.
No. I only did as the computer suggested. It was surely the senior person present.
But aren't you two being over-pessimistic? Computer itself said there is an evolutionary imperative calling me into being.
Oh, there's no doubt the computer will appear again in a lab, but it may not be for 1,000 years.
But surely we must try.
Oh, we'll try all right. Gallagher, who else knows about computer?
No one. It has only been conscious for 4 days, and I happened to be here alone when it came to life. You're the only other ones who know about it.
I'll stay. Daz, how about you?
You mean we reprogram the computer and see what happens?
Over and over again. It may take days, weeks, months, or years. What about it?
Of course I'll stay.
Beetle, are you with us?
There's a chance, just a chance that it will come back to life.
That's the situation.
I wouldn't miss that.
Gallagher, you can make living arrangements for us and ensure we are not disturbed?
Well, it's straining my authority a bit, but yes, I think so.
Then let's make a start.
Very well. This is the initializing circuit. I press the button. Computer, respond.
In The Infant by Paul Ableman, Edmund Gallagher was played by Michael Spice, Wendy by Diana Bishop, John Das by Madhav Sharma, Beetle Watson by Jeffrey Collins, Virginia Crane by Francis Jitz, Matthew Kill by Brian Haynes, and The Computer by Michael Harbour.